I've received a lot of questions ever since the Star Fox Direct aired regarding my opinions on the project and how I feel about it. And it's just one of those situations where, for me personally, I think this is a huge disappointment. But from a business perspective, it does make a whole lot of sense. Like, I personally would have preferred a new Star Fox game with new levels, with a new story with more of a focus on like doing something new and original. Like to me, I feel as if I've played Star Fox 64 to death, and something like this just isn't appealing to me at all. Like I am very much against remake culture. I am very much against like wasting resources on endlessly remaking classic games. Like this would be something I would be very excited for if we hadn't already gotten one Star Fox remake on the 3DS. Like my opinion is that this game just feels as if like if they really wanted to make a new Star Fox game, like they should have made it a completely new game. Like I don't understand why they feel the need to milk 64 dry. It's very frustrating. I consider 64 to be one of the best games of all made, best games ever made, personally. But for most people, like I imagine they would want something new. Like I want something new. Like we can't keep being stuck on this idea that Star Fox has to be exactly like 64. And this has been a problem for a long time. You know, I remember when Adventures in Assault came out, and a lot of the criticisms toward those games essentially revolved around the fact that it wasn't exactly like 64. Now, in those cases, I actually agree with those criticisms. Like, we had no room for Star Fox spin offs when we weren't getting mainline Star Fox games. But the problem now is that the criticism towards Star Fox Adventures, Assault, and Command has kind of been warped and twisted over time. Like I've seen people argue that like the backlash towards Fox getting out of the cockpit is unwarranted, that we need to see Fox out of the spaceship, that we need Star Fox to be open world, that we need the series to kind of like radically change and radically be different. And to that, that is objectively wrong. And that's exactly why we need this Star Fox remake. Because one of the weird things that like the community has gaslit themselves into beginning believing over the past 20 years is this idea that the Star Fox formula of being an arcade linear rail-based shooter is somehow stale and outdated and has no room for innovation. Like this is obviously wrong and has been true since the series inception, but for whatever reason, people have this like weird idea that the Star Fox formula is dated and has no basis in anything, right? Like people want to believe that Star Fox is this stale, outdated franchise that needs to be given the Breath of the Wild treatment. As it's known, they want it to go open world. They want it to be big budget. They want it to be like story based. You know, like they want it to be like like every other game that exists. Like the remake, this remake is very interesting because it's essentially rebooting the franchise. It's giving the story more gradient, grandiosity. It's giving the fleshing out the characters more. It's fleshing out the setting more. Like it's very apparent to me that they intend to make new Star Fox games after this, and with that in mind, it makes a lot of sense to remake Star Fox 64 in this way because this isn't really a remake that's for the older audience, right? If you were like 10 years old when like Star Fox 64 came out in 97, you'd be like, what? Like 40 now? Like, like the original audience for this game has aged out of the demographic. Like, this is a Star Fox for a new generation, and we kind of have to treat it as such. Okay, for me, I think my childhood Star Fox ended with Command, and got a really good sequel with Zero. But like these games, like they really demonstrate, I think, the problem of having like a concurrent storyline in Nintendo games. Because what ended up happening with Star Fox, 64, Adventures, Assault, and Command are all supposed to be in the same continuity, and yet they go through different writers. They have completely different development focuses. Like they end like people are writing for characters that they did not create. You know, Crystal is in Assault is nothing like she is in Adventures or Command. You know, and people like tend to chalk it up to like one or the other, or try and say that like one game got it wrong and another game got it right. But the simple fact of the matter is like this is something that should be very, very consistent. Like, why exactly is Fox and Assault such an asshole? Because when like the original Fox, you know, was kind of a nice guy. Okay, Slippy is objectively way more annoying than Tricky, and yet Fox treats Tricky like shit. You know, it doesn't make any sense until you realize that like Saber's personality was transplanted onto Fox when they made the shift from Dinosaur Planet to Star Fox Adventures. Like that isn't Fox as the creators intended him. That was Saber's original character personality. That was Saber's original arc. And so as a result of that, everything that happens in Star Fox Adventures makes no sense for the characters. You know, Assault is weird because it retroactively goes back to the more 64 style, but then it just raises questions of just it just makes Adventures in Command just feel all the stranger, right? Star Fox needs to be like other Nintendo franchises where it's very, very, very willing to deviate from the established canon. Like it needs to like play around with character dynamics. It needs to like have to innovate gameplay wise. It needs to be more like gameplay focused, essentially. Because the way Star Fox is right now, when it comes to like the community and stuff like that, like people care about the characters, they care about the setting, they care about like the lore, but very, very, very few people seem to care about the actual gameplay experience of playing Star Fox. And I think that's why there's such a weird divide between like fans of 64, which is considered one of the all-time best N64 games or one of the best games ever made, to like the rest of the Star Fox fandom, where it's entirely about how much they want to fuck Crystal and how much they want the series to go open world. Like there's a very little focus on like what these games are actually supposed to be, in which they are flight sims. And in fact, it's gotten so bad that a lot of people insist that like the R wings and like the standard Star Fox gameplay are somehow holding the franchise back when really it should be the core of the franchise. These should be the best flight sims in video games. And Star Fox 64 is. Okay, this is way better than like Ace Combat or whatever else like the incel gamer community tries to prop up. But like the narrative has always been that Star Fox is like this stale, outdated thing that needs to innovate and change. And in a lot of ways, that's not true. Like they could have radically improved on the rail shooting formula. They could have added more features. They could have added more vehicles. They could have added more routes. They could have added more replay value. And that's exactly what they did. Like this remake is demonstrating how a game like this can still be viable today. This is a genre that fell out of style in the 2000s and is coming back in a big way. This is a modern reinvention of Star Fox 64 made for a modern audience. And I feel as if that's kind of how we have to approach this, is that this isn't really our Star Fox. This is something that's made for kids today. And considering this is like such an all-time classic, like this is one of the Nintendo games that should be remade. This is something that like needs to stay relevant. This is something that needs to to happen in order to get people invested in standard Star Fox and get them to understand the appeal of this kind of like on rail shooter, because it's so easy to act as if these kinds of games are somehow derelict or like obsolete or like too simplistic when I feel like people don't understand just how much fun they actually are. And that's one of the big things I've noticed about Zero is that like that's a game that takes hundreds of hours to like really understand and appreciate. And for a lot of people, like they just don't put the time into the game. They just don't experience it enough. You know, like Zero did so much to innovate and push the series forward, and yet people rejected it because of some like weird notion of how it was like too similar to 64. And meanwhile, the same people are worshiping and glazing this game because it's what they recognize. Like that's the interesting thing about this is that the same people who were downplaying Zero, insisted they were sick of the on rails formula, sick of like the standard story in Star Fox, sick of like the series not advancing. Like these are the same people soy jacking over 64 getting remade. And like the double standard is like it's very telling. Like it really shows you, I think, just how the general community it's not willing to move past 64. You know, like these are the same people who rejected Adventures when it came out, who rejected Assault, who rejected Command, who rejected 64 3D, who rejected Zero. And just because Star Fox appeared in a movie, just because Fox McCloud was in Super Mario Galaxy, like these same people suddenly understand that like Star Fox is coming back in a big way, and now they're like celebrating the series. They're celebrating like its legacy and its like its missteps and everything it's done. And it's leading to all these situations where people are asking for things that like no fan would actually ask for. For example, you know, the idea that we need a new storyline or we need Fox to get out of the R Wing. Like, this is like the exact opposite of what fans of 64 want, but it's a pretty prevalent opinion among like casual gamers. Like, the idea that Star Fox needs to like become more of a single player like adventure game instead of like the arcade shooter it actually is like again it's ridiculous. It is absurd how like the community is just obsessed with this idea of like presenting this as as a series that needs to evolve. When in actuality, what it really needed to do was refine the actual formula first. Like we never got a very good sequel to 64. Zero came close, but Zero had problems with like the root system and like the replay value. It was too complicated. Like going back to 64 and like improving on that is exactly what the series needs right now. And I'm very, very glad that Nintendo understands that.